doctoral researcher at the University of Antwerp, and as a university partner we were responsible for this work package of delivering the business model. And so I was given 15 minutes, so I will try to tell you all about the benefits of this Smart Cities business model, which is of course far too little, 15 minutes for all these benefits, but I'm sure you'll discover it all in practice this afternoon. So I will try to talk a little bit about when to use the business model, why to use the business model, and then this distinction with the biodiversity net gain, of which I'm sure you all know much more about than I do as a foreigner. But here I am. So I will try to talk as little as possible. So let's start with the video. I also have to manage two machines, so that's a little bit confusing.
In European cities, the effects of climate change are increasingly felt. Hotter summers and heavier rain showers lead to heat stress and flooding. In the Nature Smart Cities project, 8 municipalities and 3 universities have teamed up to take action. In 7 pilot projects, they experiment and learn how to build green and climate-resilient cities. Based on their experience, they have developed a business model.
The Nature Smart Cities business model is an Excel tool where local authorities can fill in an infrastructure project. So you fill in how many trees, how many square meters of grassland, and you can see how ecosystem services will be impacted.
So what are these ecosystem services?
Ecosystem services are benefits that nature creates to us, humans. So for example, if we have a tree, it not only improves water retention and infiltration, but also helps filtering the air. We have habitat for biodiversity, small birds for example. So there's a wide range of ecosystem services that are created by just a tree. Together with our colleagues from the University of Ghent, we compiled a list of ecosystem services, primarily from academic research, that are especially relevant in urban settings.
We started out with the idea of making just a PDF document with some information, and we ended up with a tool where the ecosystem services are quantified and people can actually calculate the value of their own projects.
We spent a lot of time developing this business model, but we wanted to be practical as well. So we went out to local authorities to test the business model. And with this feedback, we could refine the business model again to make it even more applicable.
Yellow is a moderate potential. And those results are all summarized in these 4 charts.
The business model tool is becoming really valuable in ways that we never really anticipated. Not only is it allowing us to look at our plans and value them, it's allowing us to go back to our plans. Can we push the barriers? Can we improve biodiversity more? So it's really helping us to be more innovative, to think out of the box.
I think the business model generates a new mindset in thinking wider than just single benefits, but looking at a range of benefits.
I think it's really valuable that local communities can really have numbers.
The business model is a very interesting tool to make a comparison between different scenarios.
For Cambridge, it's been allowing us to express our project in financial terms, which has secured additional funding for the project and its legacy.
With this business model, we hope to give nature and green infrastructure a voice in the decision-making process.
The next step for the business model, I hope people would use the tool to better understand the value of green infrastructure. Maybe once you use it, you will discover new benefits that green infrastructure and ecosystem services in general can generate for you and your city.
So about the business model development, our loyal fans, or the ones that have attended our webinars in the past, might, this slide might seem familiar to them, but we've recycled it once again to emphasize the fact that this business model really is developed in a fully collaborative approach, and so bridging the gap between research and practice. So on the one hand, and that's where we are, we have our academic partners reviewing, evaluating and bringing together all this knowledge that is already out there has been generated through previous projects. And then on the other hand, we have our city partners, and through interviews about perceptions, hurdles, barriers, but also expectations and needs in GI development, insights were gained into which links in this process could be optimized to make it easier for local authorities to explore GI options. And then from all of these findings and through the experiences and expertise that we got from valuation applications with our Nature Smart Cities pilots, we co-developed and co-created this business model tool. And then also in the validation phase of demonstrated testing, we try to involve local authorities as much as possible to make this business model as applicable as possible. And maybe that's also something that I want to say. This is just a starting point for the Nature Smart Cities business model. At the University of Antwerp, we want to keep developing this business model, and so also your feedback today will be is very much appreciated and could mean that in the future the business model is even more applicable and even more relevant to your GI cases. So when to use the business model? So that being said, when would you use this business model tool? We distinguish two different motives for which the Nature Smart Cities business model tool could prove valuable for your municipality. In any case, the business model is best used in early project stages. So the first group of projects are those that have been signed off already, but where the spatial arrangement can still be optimized or is still a little bit subject of debate. And as a municipality, you could then use the Nature Smart Cities business model to evaluate on a high level. It allows you to evaluate the ecosystem services that are generated or expected to be generated through this project. The second opportunity for business model use then are those that are no projects yet. So currently they may be paved areas, squares, maybe redundant parking areas or impermeable pavements, any spatial arrangement that you've walked past, maybe this morning or when you came here, and made you wonder, wouldn't it be nice if this was a little greener? So we call these project ideas. And then through playing around with the business model, you're able to get a view on how this greening impacts ecosystem services and gives you a little bit of inspiration on how to efficiently use the available space to maximize certain outputs. For example, your municipality might be focusing on mitigating the effects of urban heat islands, and then through the business model you can try different spatial interpretations and see how explore how this goal might be maximized. Next slide. Why? Why use a business model? So first of all, a business model, as already said a few times, a little bit of repetition does no harm, I guess. The business model is entirely based on academic research and results from a unique collaboration between three universities, our university, the University of Antwerp, and then Ghent University and Imperial College London. So you have a scientifically sound yet accessible method at your disposal. Then you get an understanding of the value of ecosystem service, a better understanding of the value of ecosystem services. This might be in a qualitative, quantitative, or monetary way. And then since ecosystem services are defined as benefits nature provides to us, I've already said that in the video, users are allowed to explore and assess the multi-benefits of green infrastructure at the same time. Our business model can not only be used to get an estimation of the expected benefits, but also on the cost side of GI investments, it can give some estimations. So the extensive database allows for updating in the future, so we will try to keep the business model up to date. To get, so this way you get a view on the added value that GI projects are likely to generate and how different spatial arrangements influence this added value. The business model is suited to be deployed on clearly defined project cases. So this means that it works best if you know the size of the area you want to assess as well as the current state in terms of gray, green or blue infrastructure. And in this clearly defined project area, you can then deploy the business model to explore how different options to redesign the area impact these infamous ecosystem services. In this sense, the business model is unique in allowing you to compare green and grey options as well. And by going through this process, it will serve as an inspiration, maybe, to fine-tune your plans or ideas with additions to the design of which you haven't or you might have not thought before. And then the final goal of the business model is to have a concise and interpretable overview of the costs and benefits of your GI project and the impacts that different project designs have. And this is then all featured in a fact sheet. So by choosing in the assessment which ecosystem services you want to see assessed, it allows you to speak in relevant arguments, relevant terms to the stakeholder group you wish to communicate with. So it can be with your citizens, it can be with your decision maker. And to support you going through all of this, we've spent a lot of energy into creating 2 documents that you can consult. We have a step-by-step guide telling you what to do in each worksheet, and we have a technical manual that provides the theoretic and academic background behind all of this reasoning. Apart from telling you why use the business model, maybe even more important, I don't know, telling you why not to use the business model, or when not to use the business model. So as previously mentioned, the business model works best with clearly defined project areas. So we discourage the use of the business model for citywide assessment. Other tools are far more qualified to do such an exercise, such as, for example, i3 Eco, which a lot of you might have used already. Since it is a green infrastructure assessment tool, the options to include different types of green infrastructure are limited. So we do not distinguish between different grey building materials for the simple reason that grey infrastructure up until now has not generated ecosystem services. And that brings me to another infrastructure type that is not considered in this business model tool. So there's no option to include photovoltaic systems in the tool to explore renewable energy generation, for example. There's no option to do an assessment about insulation of buildings. We've had these questions before, that's why I'm telling you again. So we only consider ecosystem services, which are only generated by green infrastructure, of course. Then the Nature Smart Cities business tool is built on the premise of urbanized, developed land. So ecosystem service generation is also defined for such areas. We therefore discourage the use of the tool to value vast nature reserves, for example, or vast forests. And as we already emphasized that the business model is most valuable in initial project stages, once again, the business model is like a planning and design tool, so requiring the flexibility that you still have, or being most valuable when there's still some flexibility in the design of your projects. So we believe it's less suited to provide insights in later project stages. For example, when you have to decide which tree species you want to plant, I'm sure you didn't get advice elsewhere. And this links back to the fact that business model creates a general overview or estimation of a project's impact. So it should not be interpreted as an exact method, so don't come to us if your tree is not generating what we promised. That's not the purpose. So we can therefore not be used as an elaborate study on a certain ecosystem service. So for example, when we provide general estimations on the water infiltration capacity, this can be very different locally due to soil types and other factors. So if you're interested into that, the business model is not as valuable as a extensive hydrological modeling person. And now, the best part of my presentation, a foreigner telling you about biodiversity net gain. As I've already said, you probably know much more about this than me, so I'll briefly go over what it is and then skip to the similarities and differences. So we've received much feedback from the first workshop about what the relation is between this Nature Smart Cities biodiversity assessment and then the biodiversity net gain. So in the UK you are required to use this biodiversity net gain, but of course this doesn't rule out the fact that you can also use other approaches that gives you complementary information, such as the Nature Smart City Business Tool. So what the biodiversity net gain exactly does, you know better than me. But as I understand it, it calculates a score for each of 3 broad landscape types, the area-based lands, linear features such as hedges, and linear water. But you can't combine these scores, so you can't use one of these types to trade off against another. And within those broad landscape types, the score factors in the type of landscape, the size of the landscape, its condition, which I'm told is an arbitrary assessment, its distinctiveness. So, for example, meadows are high distinctiveness, and then amenity grasslands low. The strategic values such as connectivity to other spaces and then risk factors are also used. Similarities. So to help you guys better understand the differences, let's first go over the similarities between both. So both are based on academic expertise, and both tools use macro-enabled or automated spreadsheets. We both use Habitat as a proxy for the biodiversity assessment. We have a before and after methodology. We share the capacity to compare alternative approaches. We cover a variety of landscape types and scales, and neither is a substitute for ecological expertise. Now, the differences. The 2 approaches do different things, that's clear. So the biodiversity net gain is very detailed in terms of landscape types and classification, which is probably helpful, and it factors in things which the Nature Smart Cities tool ignores. But this also means then, on the other hand, that you have a lot more preparation and groundwork to do, that you even need a qualified assessor for water-based landscapes. And next to this, it also does not allow trading between different landscape types, the area, linear, and linear water thing. And then on the other hand, we have the Nature Smart Cities tool, which calculates the Shannon-Weaver index, a popular metric in ecology, that is, and expresses the diversity of the landscape, and thus also the likeliness to create ecologically valuable environments. And this Shannon-Weaver index is based on the landscape structures and the evenness of these landscape types. It's a metric that can be used to compare a site, looking at different alternatives, but you can also use it beyond that, comparing different sites. Next to this, the Nature Smart Cities business model features species level calculation, albeit for selected species only. And you can make very small changes to sites, such as adding a herbaceous border or a bee hotel, and seeing whether that makes a difference. In that sense, we're talking about the inspiration factor that I mentioned before. Next to this, the Nature Smart Cities business model is less demanding in terms of data, although that also may be a weakness in terms of precision. It makes the calculation more accessible, however, to a non-expert, non-ecologist user, for example. And then the best-selling point probably for the Nature Smart Cities business model, it's not just about biodiversity. So biodiversity is an element of the Nature Smart Cities business model, but it's just a small part. It says biodiversity alongside other important metrics such as air quality, water retention, cultural ecosystems, and more. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I don't know, questions maybe during the breaks? And for biodiversity net gain questions, there's still. So that was it.